Alright, welcome back to Fight Talk, where we talk combat sports. I am Austin Ullman, and I'm coming at you with a little UFC 307 preview today. The weigh-ins are taking place right now on this beautiful Friday morning. Ceremonial weigh-ins will take place later. The press conference was last night, kind of a dud. Um, Probably, maybe the first press conference ever where the women were the highlight of the show. Kayla Harrison was taking shots at Pena. Um, And then obviously some fun with the title fight. Pena, I thought, performed well. Kayla performed well. And everyone else was about what we expected. We didn't expect much from this press conference. Might have been the least interesting press conference, um, maybe ever. I mean, that was not great. But the fights are going to deliver. We know that much. There's a lot of good fights on this card. And obviously Alex Poatan Pereira is headlining here against Khalil Roundtree. We'll get to that. We'll hit every fight. But first, how did we get here? So we got UFC 307. So this summer, the entire time it looked like this was Ilya and Max. We were guessing O'Malley, Merab at the Sphere, and then we were guessing this was Ilya Max. And then all of a sudden, the UFC announces that Ilya Max is UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. Nobody saw that coming. Obviously, the original plan was to have Ilya and Max here, I'm guessing. And then obviously the Islam injury happened, and so that fight was pushed back, maybe to January, it sounds like, at UFC 310, or December maybe. I think it'll be January. I wonder if they're going to Abu Dhabi maybe in January. We'll find out soon. But then Ilya Max went to Abu Dhabi, and I'm guessing, just based on how things have gone, I think Dana's going to start bringing bigger shows to Abu Dhabi, and so he's certainly doing it there. That fight card is stacked, and that takes place in 3 weeks already. So a quick turnaround here. This is going to be, we got 2 pay-per-views here in October, but we didn't know what was going to happen. And, I mean, me and Jackson went through it quite a bit over the summers. Who the heck is going to headline 307? Because Pereira obviously did 300, stepped in at 303, and said, okay, I think I'm going to take a break till December or January or something like that. And then this date opens up, and there's really no one else that was open. Everyone else had been injured or had just fought or was going to fight. And so there it was, Alex Pereira, once again, not stepping in this time, but certainly didn't expect to be fighting this soon after UFC 303. And the performance against Yuri Prochazka, I mean, this is stuff of legends. Obviously, we'll talk about the fight with him and Khalil at the end, but obviously a lot of stuff going on there with Ankalaev and what took place there. But let's start at the bottom of this card. So this is in Salt Lake City. This will be a 9 o'clock pay-per-view start time. And here's a look at your early prelims. Not a ton of stuff to look at, but right away on the prelims, the first fight on the prelims, Cesar Almeida and Ihor Potieria. So I think Ihor's last fight, if I'm not mistaken, was at UFC 301. He was on that main card, and that's right, he fought Michel Pereira. So he was the one that took the backflip kick to the face. That was quite the fight, but Potieria obviously recently lost to Ulberg. And then Cesar Almeida, who lost his last fight to Roman Kopylov. And that was at UFC 302. So this is kind of an interesting story. We've talked about it on the podcast before with Almeida and Pereira. Some serious history between these two. And that doesn't show up on the MMA record, but these guys fought I think 2 times in Glory Kickboxing, and they were very close fights, and Cesar Almeida actually won one of the fights. So he came into the UFC, and I think Pereira told him that if he could win 3 straight fights, that he would fight him. And his third fight, he was doing really well, and his third fight was against Roman Kopylov. And I wouldn't say Almeida fought bad, but there was some serious holes in Almeida's game. If you go back to that fight, it was it was very one-sided, and Roman Kopylov did exactly what he should have done. And that was just laid on him the whole fight. Didn't do any damage on the ground. In fact, towards the end of that fight, I forget who was in the ring, but they had them get up. It might have been Herb Dean. Actually had them get up because Kopylov wasn't actually doing any damage on the ground. But Kopylov did what he needed to do, and there was some serious holes when it came to takedown defense for Almeida. But the talent is still there, and so definitely a fight to keep an eye on. I've always been high on Almeida. I think the guy's an absolute stud, but he's kind of in a Robelis to Spain situation, in my opinion, where truly all the talent in the world, but just not much background in being taken down, and not so much being taken down, but how to get out of that. Just didn't look comfortable under Kopylov, and really never had a chance of getting up if the ref, I think it was Herb Dean, had brought them up. But at that point, much too tired to actually do any damage. So then Rodriguez, Lucindo, Hubbard Hernandez here. And then your featured prelim is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Joaquin Buckley. So, man, this is such a good fight. We were calling for this fight. It was quite obvious that this fight was going to happen. Wonderboy's last fight was against Shavkat, and that was at UFC 296. So obviously Shavkat kind of did it in every way, ended up submitting him, but mostly took him down. And this is without a doubt, a retirement watch fight for Wonderboy. Obviously a fantastic UFC career, but it seems like this could potentially be the one where he calls it quits. And especially with the run that Buckley has been on. By the way, I mean, I know we have a good card, but I would have loved to see Buckley on this main card, and I know that the UFC really thinks highly of this featured prelim, but personally, this is a top. This is my second fight of the night when it just comes to fights I'm excited for. Buckley obviously had that crazy highlight knockout earlier in his career, but he has looked good, and honestly, as bad as the call-out was after his win at St. Louis, it's something to keep an eye on, because, yeah, obviously called out Conor McGregor, and then there was some serious backlash from the MMA community. Looked like him and DC squashed their beef yesterday. I didn't watch the whole video, but it looked like they had an interview and they were all right. But Buckley's last victory was at UFC St. Louis, I believe, and that was on the Derek Lewis card. And that was a fight against Ruzabov where I got to get the exact height. Yeah, Ruzabov is 6'5". So this was a really awkward fight for Buckley. Obviously being 5'10", and facing a guy who is 6'5". And he was just coming off the win against Vicente Luque, and that was earlier in the year. That was Atlantic City, I believe, is where that took place. But I think Buckley could be a serious problem in the UFC, in the division at welterweight. I think, I'm worried about the size once again in this fight, just a little bit. But Buckley showed that he can go to takedowns and do some serious damage on the ground. He showed that in his last couple fights. And I think he can show that again to Stephen Thompson. Obviously, both guys strikers. I think this fight does end up on the ground because I think that's where Buckley wants to take it. But there's some interesting matchups, and Buckley is just so strong. I mean, he is so just built and so strong and packs so much power. But stylistically, there's just so many fascinating things, and so many guys in the welterweight division who are just long. I mean, Ian Gary, Leon Edwards, Stephen Thompson. I mean, just long guys and interesting And obviously, Ruzabov was 6'5", but not that talented. Didn't know what to do with all 6'5" of himself, honestly. And so, yeah, it sets up an interesting situation. And I'll look up the divisional rankings. And get a look at 170 just to see what's next for these guys. Obviously, Bilal Muhammad, the champ, which, by the way, I think would be a fantastic situation for Buckley to find himself in. He's not that far away. He's ranked 11th right now. Wonderboy's 9. But there's just some awkward matchups out there. I don't think he has that much trouble with Sean Brady or Colby Covington. I really like him matched up against anyone that's his size, like Shavkat or anyone. Even Usman. But Leon and Gary could be interesting ones. Guys that have shown that they'll just use their length to win, not necessarily going to go for finishes. And those are the kind of guys that I think could give Buckley some problems. Not sure if they actually will. But this is a banger fight. I'm going to pick Buckley. I'm going to say he gets it done with a ground and pound finish in round 2. I think Wonderboy tries something. Buckley takes him down and gives him some of that vicious ground and pound. So he's minus 225, and I'll take Buckley there. And then we get into the main card. So this is starting at 9 o'clock. And how about Kayla Harrison checking in at minus 1150? So, big time favorite. And in fact, she was doing exactly what she should have done last night, and that was picking fights with Juliana Pena and not Ketlin Vieira, because there's no reason to do that. This should be a dominant win. I think the last time we've seen odds like this was like a Bo Nickel and Cody Brundage situation at UFC 300, and that's kind of what this feels like. Just someone who's in the way and someone who's just destined to hold the belt real soon. And that's what made last night with the press conference so interesting, was that it really feels like it's only a matter of time. There's just a few people. Bo Nickel has that. Kayla Harrison has that. Khamzat Chimaev has that if he can stay healthy and actually get in the octagon. But she's one of those people. Just absolutely dominant. And I can't say enough good things about what she did on the mic last night. That was really cool to see. So I think she wins this. But the interesting situation is obviously taking place at women's bantamweight with Raquel Pennington. Right, so Pennington and Pena are fighting this Saturday night. We'll get to that fight in a second. And then Vieira's the second ranked. Kayla Harrison's ranked third. And really not anyone else that I can see contending anytime soon. But I think Kayla Harrison wins easy. And we'll talk more about the situation at 45 after I make my pick for who wins the Pennington-Pena fight. But kind of a fun situation. And you've always got Amanda Nunes, who I still don't think is done fighting. And a Kayla Harrison-Amanda Nunes fight would be just absolutely awesome. And as much hate as women's grapplers get, tune in for Kayla Harrison, and I mean that sincerely. Like, if you don't know who Kayla Harrison is, if you don't know much about her, if you didn't see her last fight, that was her first in the UFC. But seriously, tune in for this. This is some just intense Khamzat Chimaev type grappling that she will put on. She is so extremely strong. She didn't look great at the press conference last night, just with the huge weight cut that has to take place for her to make 35. But it seems like she's going to make it. Obviously, that's going on right now, so I'll find out in a matter of time if she does make weight. And so I'll be checking on that. But, yeah. Then we've got Kevin Holland and Roman Dolidze. So Dolidze's last fight, what was that? He went up a weight division. That's right, against Anthony Smith. So he went up to 205. He's back at 185 now. But that was never going to last. this is an interesting fight, and it looks like, okay, the weigh-ins are starting soon, so we'll get information at that. But Dolidze and Kevin Holland, I think, this is interesting. I think Kevin Holland wins this fight. Obviously, in his last fight, he nearly broke his opponent's arm. That was just a disgusting submission, just waiting for the finish, and he did get the win. We talked about this with Kevin Holland's last fight, I remember, on this podcast, but you have a really interesting situation with Kevin Holland, where if you just go down the list, I mean, he's truly just one of the few guys that just beats everyone that he should, and loses to everybody that he should lose to. Losing to MVP, losing to JDM, losing to Wonderboy, Hamzat, Vittori Brunson, and everybody else who's clearly better that he beats. It's really interesting. And this one, I'm actually not quite sure. I don't quite know who's the better fighter, but I think I'm going to go Kevin Holland in this one. I think I wouldn't be surprised either way. I think Dolidze is a fine fighter. But I'm just not sure. I mean, he couldn't go 3 rounds. You remember the last round of his fight with Anthony Smith? It was absolutely brutal to watch. It was literally hard to watch because they were so slow and so out of shape. And obviously part of that was a different weight class, but Kevin Holland's not like that. He's going to be ready. He's going to be well-trained, very in shape. And I believe we're going to see that. And I believe that he's going to put on a show. I think he'll actually get a finish. I think he'll get a finish up top. Not a submission this time. I think he'll get a finish with the striking. I think he'll get a knockout. And I just think I'll take it in the 3rd round to happen. The cardio is a real issue for Dolidze after the last fight. So we'll take Kevin Holland there. Jose Aldo and Mario Bautista. So Bautista's the favorite. This one's such an interesting one. I'm so fascinated. Obviously, Aldo in the Hall of Fame now. Was going to box on that Jake Paul undercard on the Mike Tyson one, the July 20 date. And then the UFC was like, what are you doing for UFC 301? So he takes that fight, and he beat Martinez, I believe it was. Yeah, Jonathan Martinez. And so we've got this guy who's in the Hall of Fame, and now he's back, and literally people were calling for a title shot after his win against Martinez. Now that's not as likely if he wins this, because Merab is the champ, and he already lost to Merab in like pretty decisive fashion. But I think Jose Aldo is going to win this fight. He looked really, really good, and he's the underdog in this fight, but he looked just so surprisingly good. And Martinez looked good too. Martinez was quick. I think Bautista's going to show us a lot of the same stuff. But Bautista might go for a takedown here. I hope not. I hope they stand and trade. But Jose Aldo, I just did not expect him to be that quick and that sharp. And he put on a good enough performance, the unanimous decision win, for people to ask for a title shot. I mean, it was never going to happen. But we might be closer than we think. So he's ranked 10th in the division now. If he wins this, I would love to see a fight against like Song Yadong. I think that would be really good. The last Song Yadong Pereira fight was just so good. Both guys looked really good. I think that would be the true test of, okay, what can Aldo? Can he truly do this? And then after that, it's tough because this is a division full of dogs when we're talking about the wrestlers here. But after that, I think you give him a guy like a Figgy or a Jan who's kind of waiting for a title shot, maybe 1 or 2 away. And I would love to see that. But this is just, it's amazing that we're here. It's amazing that he's the 3rd fight from the top, and that we're still doing this whole Jose Aldo deal. So I'm going to take Jose Aldo with the victory. We'll quickly hit on the co-main event here, and then we're going to get to the main event. Raquel Pennington, Juliana Pena. I think Pena wins. Pennington is the most boring champion we've ever had in the UFC. She's not a good fighter. She would lose to Kayla Harrison. She'll lose to Juliana Pena. She would lose to Amanda Nunes. Unfortunately, none of those. I mean, the Pena's fight's happening right now, but it was unfortunate. Just an absolute snooze fest on that Strickland Duplessis card. She's waited this long. I'm not sure why. I don't know if she's been celebrating having the belt. She's actually the favorite in this fight. But we know what Juliana Pena can do. And I think Juliana Pena gets it done. I think she actually submits her. I think we get a finish in this fight. I think it'll be a more interesting fight. And I think they're going to strike more than we think. Because these seem like two women that it could actually get their head that people find this fight boring. Some people just don't care. Like, Zhang Weili is like, I'm just going to get it done however I can and stay the champ. I don't think these two girls are like that. I think we're going to actually see them try to get a finish and make this fight interesting. And I think we saw a glimpse of that in the press conference, but I think we'll truly see that tomorrow night. So going to that situation now, at 35 for the women, I think Pena will be the champion. I think Kayla Harrison will face Pena. And I think Kayla Harrison will win that fight and be the champion. And hopefully bring back Amanda Nunes. That would be best case scenario. So I'm taking Juliana Pena. And I think she gets it done by submission. Now, Alex Pereira and Khalil Roundtree Jr., the fight that nobody was asking for, but we got. And if there's a positive, it's that if there's ever a fight where we're not going to see a takedown, it's this one. We've had Bilal take down Leon and did his thing, and Merab take down O'Malley and did his thing. And as much as I give congratulations to those guys for becoming champions, it is boring. And this is not going to be that way. I'm pretty sure we'll see no takedowns in this fight, and I can't wait for it. This is almost just as close as you can get to a guarantee of just an absolute strike fest. This is the one that you invite your friends to who aren't UFC fans to watch. This is the one that's going to absolutely produce no matter what. Listen, I think I said, so we'll just get this off the table right away. I said it in January that me and Jackson, we went through and we picked who would be the champion at the end of 2024. I picked Khalil Roundtree to be the champion at 205. We then came back, I think in March, and went through and said who will be the next champion in each division. We went through, and I said Khalil Roundtree. I stuck to my decision. I said who'll be the next guy. And here we are. So I'm not gonna get my pick yet. I'll talk about the fight first, but it has been. That was a different Alex Pereira. Well, I'll just come out and say it right now. When I said that in January, Alex Pereira had not beaten Jamal Hill in Nebraska a second time. At that point, Alex Pereira had beaten Yuri, and he'd beaten Jan. And the Jan win was okay, but not crazy. The Yuri win, he won, but there was some spurts where Yuri looked really good and maybe was going to get a finish. Kind of questionable. So at that point, he was a great champion. It's fun to have Pereira back as a champion. And this is a really cool story. Maybe we're going to get Izzy, and no one was talking about the heavyweight division. No one's talking about any of these things. No one's talking about Alex Pereira being the best fighter in the UFC or anything like that. He's just a good champion, right? We got a lot of good champions. We had Sean O'Malley, and we just had a lot of good champions in the sport. Volk was still a champion. I miss those days. Having an active champion at 145. But he was just another champion. That's not the case anymore. He is as invincible as a character as you'll see. Like, truly, truly invincible. The kind of guy that seems like he's just going to go in there and get a knockout every time. He's not going to get touched. And he can do it by kicking you in the head. He can do it with his left hook. He can do it truly however he wants. And by the way, I think if he did shoot a takedown in this fight, I think he could shoot a better takedown than Khalil and win the fight that way if he wanted it. I don't think he will, luckily for us. But just stylistically, before I give my pick, talking about this fight, I think It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for Khalil Roundtree. It really is. Pereira's minus 500. Nobody was asking for this. So Khalil, this is Khalil's shot. And I get his last one was against Anthony Smith, a guy who I've been very vocal that he's not a good fighter. But Khalil's looked really good. He wasn't great to start his UFC career. There was flashes. And then lately, he's just been fantastic. Just look at his record. He's just rattled it off win after win in vicious fashion. And so it's hard to tell because it was Anthony Smith. But once again, when you have a guy as sharp as Pereira, it kind of feels like the Yuri thing. Like, he could, when you have a guy as sharp as Pereira, you have to guess that Pereira's going to find that punch in the first or second round. Like, genuinely. You have to come into this fight saying, if I don't get a knockout in the first round, he's going to find his punch and knock me out. Like, it's a guarantee that within the first 3 rounds, Pereira will knock you out at this point. And so you just have to take that information and say, okay, then I have to get a knockout before he does. Because he's going to do it, but I have to just do it first. And if I don't, it's just a matter of time. He's that invincible. He is that good. And so it's a tough situation for a guy like Roundtree to be in, but a situation that I think he could potentially succeed in. But it's just, like, you see the left hook he landed against Jamal Hill, and it's just like, oh, that's not even that flush. And he just brutally knocked him out. So I think minus 500, I could actually see that going further, minus 600 or 700 in this fight. Like, this, like, it matches up pretty well for Pereira. We felt like Yuri could get it done just by his unorthodox nature, and just found out that, like, it just didn't matter. And I don't think this matters, that Khalil's on a tear and anything like that. Pereira is just, he is so good, and I think very soon, I said this after his last fight when me and Jackson did a live show on the podcast after his fight at UFC 303 against Prochazka. I said, I think he's going to be the GOAT soon. I think he's going to be the GOAT within the next 2 years of this sport. He's on that kind of a run. It's absolutely incredible what we're seeing from this guy. And it just feels so like no one's even talking about that he was just fighting at UFC 303. Like, it's just so natural for him to just be stepping in and just saving the UFC on some of these cards. But, yeah, listen, significant strike accuracy, you can see it there, 69 to 43. Significant strikes, 5.23 to 3.84. Has 2.5 inch reach. Listen, he's got 3 inches in height. This is a nightmare for Khalil Roundtree. We're not going to sugarcoat it, and so I'll just go ahead and give my pick. I think Alex Pereira is going to win. And that is, it's really interesting to say, because if I had any glimpse of hope that Khalil Roundtree was going to win this fight, I would pick him. Why would I pick him? Because I said it in January and I said it in March. Khalil Roundtree is going to be the next champion. And so if I were able to pick him here and then he wins and he was the champion, he was the next champion and he was the champion at the end of the year, that would be an all-time call. I have an opportunity for an all-time call here. Right? And I can't do it because there's no there's no even glimmer of hope. At that time, Pereira wasn't invincible. Now he is. I don't think Roundtree can do it. I don't think Ankalaev can do it. I don't even know if Tom Aspinall can do it. I question it. I think about it often. For me, for Roundtree, because when I said that at the time, it was just stupid because it didn't look like Roundtree would ever get a title shot. And even a couple months ago, it didn't look like Roundtree was going to get a title shot by any means. And he did. And if he were to win it and do that, that would be an all-time call. For me to call that, the circumstances we had in January, for me to call that would have been insane. And so, realistically, I should say, yes, Roundtree's going to win. Even if I don't think he's going to win, even if he has like a 25% chance to win, I would say, yeah, Roundtree is going to win. And then if he actually somehow miraculously wins, I would take the largest victory lap of all time. I'd be celebrating more than Khalil would. And by the way, I love Khalil. And And that's part of why I did this, is because I love him as a character, I love him as a person, I love him as a fighter, I love his style, I love everything about him. He gives great interviews, he's really quite the character, he's quite the guy. But I can't do it because he doesn't have a shot. He doesn't have a shot. He doesn't even have a little bit of a shot. At all. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. So I genuinely wish he had a shot. I could come on here and say, he's going to do it. And I wish I could give myself an opportunity to take that large victory lap and have a chance. And by the way, if Khalil does win, it's going to be really unfortunate because I won't be able to take credit for what I said before because of what I said on this podcast today. But I am that confident in giving you guys the truth and saying that Alex Pereira is going to win this fight quite easily. Second round knockout. This guy is an animal and he'll be the GOAT soon. And I love Khalil Rountree, so it's hard to say that. Looking in just quickly at the rankings, light heavyweight, Pereira, he's going to beat Khalil. And then I think Johnny Walker should get the title shot. No. Ulberg is an opportunity there. Man, when's Jan going to fight again? Like, seriously. How about the time that guy's taken off after him? He's fought since the last Pereira fight. So Pereira will have fought Prochazka, Hill, Prochazka. He'll have fought at least 4 times since that fight. And that was just a 3-round fight. And, I mean, it hasn't been covered. I have no idea what's going on there. But, obviously, Magomed Ankalaev's the guy. So he faces... Volkov. Or Rakic, rather, not Volkov. He faces Rakic. So, Rakic obviously had the win over Prochazka at UFC 300. Or Prochazka had the win over Rakic, sorry, at UFC 300. And now Rakic is getting the shot here. Obviously, I don't know what happens next for Yuri. That's such a weird situation because he clearly cannot. I mean, he just can't. You can't do the Pereira thing again. There's just nothing there, and so it's hard. You beat Rakic. I'd be really down for a Prochazka and Blachowicz fight. I think that would be really good. But yeah, I mean, Jamal Hill. Maybe you can make that fight again. No one really needs to see that again. But nobody needs to see any of these fights, to be honest. I think Pereira beats all these guys. I think Ulberg, seriously, Ulberg and I think Ankalaev should be the guys we're talking about. But I think Ankalaev's far and away. And by the way, there's this narrative that Ankalaev's boring. It's not the case. Ankalaev is a fantastic striker. Go see it for yourself if you haven't actually watched him fight. There's questions, too, kind of like Roundtree, about who he's fought. I mean, the last fight was really impressive, but then you look back and it's like, oh, that was against Johnny Walker. It's not as impressive anymore. Volkan Ozdemir just beat him. But, like, he's good. He's a stud. And does a lot more striking than people realize. That would be a really good fight, I think. But, like, yeah, Jamal Hill don't need to see it. Roundtree, it'll be a fun fight, but obviously didn't really need to see it. And then Ulberg, there's nobody else there that we need to look at. And then, obviously, the picture, and we'll talk about this after on the post-show. Hoping to drop a post-show, maybe go live right after the fights. And potentially do it with Jackson, see what he's doing. He's been really busy this week, so that's why I'm doing this one by myself. But hopefully we can drop a post-show together. I'm not sure what that'll quite look like yet, but yeah. So I think we'll be talking about Pereira and Aspinall once again when this fight is over, and we're going to continue to talk about it until hopefully it happens. Obviously, you can throw Jones in the mix too, but Alex Pereira gets it done, which once again, guys, it's unfortunate. Like, it's unfortunate that I have to say that. I really wish I could stick with this whole Khalil Roundtree thing. And who will I be cheering for? Probably Pereira. Just because of, like, how big this is now. But, like, I love Khalil. And if he won, I would have nothing wrong with that. Although, like I said, it'll be frustrating. Because I had some hot takes about how good Khalil Roundtree was going to be this year. And I'm just not able to stick with him. Because Pereira has been a different beast in these last 2 fights. If you're throwing together a parlay, put Pereira in it. I would not put Aldo in it. I would put Pena in it. I think those are good odds at 145. I would not put Holland in it. Not super confident in that. Kayla Harrison's not going to give you much value. But Buckley could give you some better value. Caesar, I would throw on him, but he's minus 400. I would throw... I mean, you can throw Kayla on there because she's an absolute lock. I would throw Buckley, Pena, and Pereira on my parlay. Not sure what odds you get with that, but I think there's some serious potential there. The Aldo fight, I can see it going either way. You can throw Aldo. I mean, there's good odds there, but I can see that one going either way. That's going to be an interesting fight. And the Holland Elite fight is going to be really interesting. So, yeah. That's Pereira Roundtree. That is UFC 307, October 5 in the Delta Center, Salt Lake. By the way, we're going to see another head kick. We saw it with Gaethje last year, Gaethje Poirier, July 29th last year, and the year before we saw it with Edwards and Usman. We're going to see it again. I was asking for it last time. I said, I hope he knocks out Prochazka with the head kick at 303. And he did. So that was pretty awesome. And I would love to see it again here. Another head kick in Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City has delivered. They get a pretty good crowd. Once again, every time we go to Salt Lake City, it's mandatory to say this. Watch out for the elevation. Some training things. It's just like, especially with Delize, I talked about his cardio. That could be a serious issue. I would keep an eye on that. I would not throw Delize in the parlay because of that. He already had issues at normal elevation. So, yeah, watch out for that. There's usually at least 1 or 2 fights that it's like, well, that was quite obvious that was a big issue. But Alex Pereira, and still the UFC light heavyweight champion, we will be coming at you Saturday night with a post show. I cannot wait for this. And the rest of the year in the UFC is quite good. They're putting the Apex to rest and doing some renovations there. And so, I mean, we can take a look at it. The schedule here, it's quite fantastic. A lot of good fight nights coming up. Obviously, Contender Series is winding down now, but Royval and Tara are next week. That's a 3 p.m. start, which means 7 o'clock, I think, for main card. And then the PFL, the following weekend, October 19, in Saudi. That's the Ngannou and Ferreira card, and some other big-time names. Makita, I think, is on that, and Paul Hughes is on that, and that's going to be fantastic. Also that night is Fluffy and Pereira. So that's going to be fascinating. Michel Pereira, kind of a Khalil Roundtree type, where he's really moving up quickly. And then the following weekend, we've already got UFC 308, Moreno Albazi. But this is, and then Jan Figgy. We get November 23rd. That's like a 6 a.m. main card start. I can't wait for that. That'll be fun. But it's going to be a really good end of the year because a lot of these fight nights are going to be in arenas like we've been calling for because of the Apex game renovations. So certainly looking forward to that. But that's all I got for now. I am Austin Ullman, and I got Alex Pereira winning by knockout in the second round. We will see you then. Hopefully everyone can make weight this morning. We can see all these fights. We've been on a good little streak here with fighters. There's a lot of, obviously, like in June, July, there was a lot of stuff going on with fighters not being able to make weight and injuries and things like that. We've been on a good roll here, so knock on wood that continues. But this has been Fight Talk, and I will see you next time.